Austin.
Yes.
I'm Shane. This is 40K Fanatics Podcast. We don't know how this episode will go out. This could be an extra supplementary episode, or maybe we'll just put it in its normal spot this week. I'm not sure. Nothing's wrong with Casey. He is not lost in the warp. We just felt like this particular topic, the homie Austin would have some good things to offer. And the topic today is 40K too hard? Just as a game, conceptually, is it too complicated? Is it too much? What other options are there out there? And obviously, this is just clickbait.
Yeah.
I mean, spoiler alert, it's not too hard. It's perfectly fine. It's no more difficult than anything else. However, me and Austin just got finished playing a game that is 180 degrees from what 40K is. What's it called?
Gunfighter's Ball.
Gunfighter's Ball by Knuckle Duster Studios Games?
I think Knuckle Duster Miniatures.
Yeah. It's like one guy in Texas probably that has
somewhere out west.
And it's very much on the beer and pretzels spectrum. And so we just played that. It was really fun. We've got the NEA Game Fest coming up for 40K Fanatics, the second year in a row.
Super excited.
Yeah, and you're going to demo that again there.
I'm planning on. I'm going to get in touch with the organizers and ask if I can get some tables set up for it.
We played a shootout at the OK Corral scenario.
Mm-hmm.
It was really good. Doc Holliday blew a dude away with a shotgun.
Blew his leg off.
We did not fight all the way to the death because winning can be different things.
Mm-hmm. We kind of role played it out.
Yeah, which we'll get into those sort of concepts. What we're going to talk about today is, I know a lot of our listeners, some of them are new to 40K and new to miniature games. And 40K is the big dog, period. And so we want to just kind of talk about our feelings and our tastes for that, and then also different kinds of games, because there are different kinds of games, and it's perfectly okay for you to participate in those.
Mm-hmm.
But first, I feel like we should do the Bits Box, because that's the format of the show. So, Austin, what have you been doing in the miniature hobby at large this week?
I've been trying to get a game of Old World, but haven't had any success with that. Either scheduling issues or people don't have their stuff ready for it. But we got a tournament coming up in about 2 weeks at Game Fest, and trying to get some practice for that.
Yeah, somebody's got to learn how to play the thing, right?
I don't know how we're going to handle that when it comes up.
Yeah, the time crunch is going to be real.
Yeah.
I mean, you are the local champion for Old World. They haven't made anything for me to buy yet.
No.
I'm looking for high elves, baby.
Dwarves need to go ahead and release already. We've been waiting on it. They were announced back in March.
Now, you already have points of vintage dwarves. How many dwarves are you going to need to buy?
I just need to fluff up a few units. I've got units of 10. I was looking for 15. So just a few more box purchases to fluff me back up to 2K. Get some games going with that.
You've got cannon. Do you have all their little siege weapons?
I've got a cannon and I've got an organ gun, but I'll probably come out with a flame cannon and grudge thrower, and I might pick those up.
Are you going to get the guy with the anvil or the rock, the stone? What is that?
The Anvil of Doom. That's like their, he doesn't use magic per se, but it's like their caster. Might pick him up.
He looks cool. Isn't there a guy held aloft on a shield too?
Oh yeah, you can take your king or your thane, and you can run them with on shield bearers. Might be only the king that can run on shield, but that's like their mount option. It's like 3 dwarves holding a guy aloft.
Your Old World armies are the man for man the smallest bunch of dudes I've ever seen. Like, you are really taking the miniatures game and doing it.
I just like little guys. I've got dwarves and goblins and blood bowls and gnomes.
They're tiny, teensy tiny.
I did get that giant recently, though.
You did get the giant. Tell us about the giant. It's an older kit, right?
Yes, it's from 2005. It's used in Sigmar at the moment, but it was originally made for Warhammer Fantasy. He's, I don't know how tall, maybe 6 inches tall, but he's kind of slumped over in like a walking pose, so he's kind of not as tall as he could be, stretched out. But it's an intricate kit. It's got so many bits and parts on it for making a regular giant, a chaos giant, a slave giant for like ogres. There's so many bits on there that if you had like 10 people build a giant, there's no way all 10 giants could look the same.
I love that. Do you intend to get the old giant, the old metal giant?
He's on the way somewhere. They've had,
man,
for some reason, North American customers of Games Workshop that did the what's it called, made to order with a lot of the old world stuff for orcs and goblins. The giants and trolls have been delayed, so I'm kind of like waiting on those.
So in my bits box, I have played 2 of the new Pariah Nexus matched play missions.
How are they?
They're really good. I like it a lot. So the action mechanic is back, and the first game I played against the homie Craig. It was not the Summer Invitational. We went ahead and played at the game store. And neither of us, we both had our regular Leviathan 10th edition lists.
Okay.
So he had a bunch of tanks and stuff, and I had a bunch of armor and things. And we both sat around, kept drawing secondaries with actions, and kept looking around saying, I don't have anybody that can do any of that.
Really?
Yeah. So the final score, Craig won, and it was something like 40 something to 50, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Because we just couldn't score anything.
That's crazy.
And we were playing the new version of Servo Skull, which is great. I always love that because it was pandemonium, as always. And then I played again. I played Casey.
Mm-hmm.
He brought his orcs over, so it was the Shane Summer Invitational here at the house. And he had set up a list that with an eye toward the action mechanic, but not quite enough. He was trying out as a list that he intends to use at the GT, at the Game Fest. And I had rejigged my list to have quite a few battle line units to run around and do actions. And then I did not get an action secondary until turn 4.
That's crazy.
It was also the tightest that Casey has ever played me. And turn 4 came around, and I had set a couple of traps for him. And he was doing good. He was holding back some stuff. He was maintaining some board control. And I didn't have any secondaries pop up. So it was real close. And then turn 4 came around, and the trap was sprung.
I bet. And
Abaddon ran down and chopped up some of his killicans and destroyed his... that gave me a new secondary called Marked for Death. You're going to love this one.
Oh, what's it do?
When you draw it, your opponent has got to pick 3 of their units.
Mm-hmm.
If I manage to kill one of them, I get 5 points.
Oh, wow.
But you can pick the ones that are back behind your deployment zone if you want.
Sounds like indirect fire.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you've been keeping up with all the rules, but we talked about them last week on the pod. The indirect is not as good as it used to be.
I've been hearing that.
Very difficult to kill stuff with indirect now because no matter what, you got to hit on a 4.
I was already hitting on a 4.
Well, and now it won't get any better because there were people that would bring stuff, even with your guard, that would hit on 2s, and that was silly. That was very silly. But it was a really fun game. And one thing that happened, though, and this is why I bring it up, one, Pariah Nexus is very fun. We'll probably do a pod talking about the intricacies of playing in match play in the Pariah Nexus. But I found that with running 3 units of Legionaries, I didn't have exactly the right WYSIWYG dudes.
Really?
And this cannot stand.
Absolutely not.
For me, for Casey, I know you will play some primed stuff, and that's why you're not allowed on the show very often. But we are so bougie, all our stuff is painted, and by golly, it all needs to be holding the right gun. And so I got into my Night Lord's kill team that I bought a while back. I've not started putting that together yet. And I realized that you only need there's only 5 unique guys in the new Night Lord's kill team. And the rest of them can be whatever.
Mm-hmm.
warriors. So you have weapon options for the other dudes that you can sub out. So I thought, well, I'll just do a couple of those in Black Legion because I needed a melt-a-gun and I need another like unit champion with like a power weapon kind of thing, plasma pistol. And so I did build the Night Lord. What's he called? I can't even.
I have no idea.
Don't even give me a line. He's for the kill team. He's got a new. It's like a new half sprue, not like the tiny sprue, but like a whole half sprue of Night Lord's bits that come with that kill team, and he looks so sick. He's got a piece together flesh cape. He's got this wild skull adorned. Is part chainsword, part beat stick.
He sounds very gruesome, Shane.
Super gruesome. It's gonna be gross. You'll love it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I needed a melt-a-gun guy, so I just built a melt-a-gun guy. He's gonna be Black Legion regular. He'll just slot right in. If I need a melt-a-gun guy in a group of 10 or whatever, a group of 5.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, doing the actions is cool. Also, I have broke glass on the Corn Lord of Skulls that I revealed to have bought last week, and started putting tank tracks together, which is always a bit of a faff, but it's going to be big.
It's a big box. I just saw it. It's
a big old box, and I mean, it's a half a sprue to put together one of his 4 tank tread feet.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to be amazing. I'm excited to paint him up. I'm going full ball sack. I've got a red that is quite light. The idea, I said it last week, but if you missed it, the idea is I'm going to do him like almost pink. But then I'm going to mix myself up and oil wash and get after him with that and the mineral spirits.
Okay.
So that I can like grime him up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to look incredible. So rather than do the grimdark where you do something in a color and then you dirty it up and it just ends up looking dark,
mm-hmm.
I'll start way too light and then come down. And I think that'll look really good. There's also an intent to sort of fade dark to light as you go from low to high on all of his armor panels and things of that nature. And I'm really enjoying my pigment powders. So all his treads and his little bulldozer and all that are going to be dirtied up.
Sure, it's going to be an intensive project.
It will be. It will be a lot. I'm looking at it with an eye to how many little sub-assemblies.
Mm-hmm.
So on his back, he is powered by these 4 vats, which I must assume hold blood.
Of course. That's probably what fuels them.
Yeah. And so there are 4 viewing windows on each of these 4 vats. So what's that, 16 viewing windows?
Sure.
And I'm going to do those as if they're not totally full so that you can see like the line
mm-hmm.
where the blood is sloshing around inside there.
There's some bubbles in there.
Yeah, I'm going to do some little bubbles and some little glass type effects to
mm-hmm.
make it look like you can see in there. I think those are going to be awesome. I've got my Army Painter Fanatic metallic set right here. Loving those. They cover so well. They go on so smooth. And there's so many subtle differences in the silvers and the golds and the coppers. Then there's a couple of oddball colors too, but they're so consistent. Like all his gold trim is just going to look incredible. So that's this week's big project. Additionally, if you look at the Whip Wednesdays on the 40K Fanatics feed on X, you can see the test model that we just did for the new batch of Demonettes for the Homie Valerie's Slanesh Mono Demon 40K army.
It looks good.
Which is slowly getting put together. They're pink to purple. That's an airbrush job. Just bang, bang, and then a little detail pass. A good way to do it if you're going to need 30 to 40, possibly 60 Demonettes.
Mm-hmm.
And other various fleshy creatures. But that's my bits box. Do you have anything else?
I don't believe so.
How do you feel about your new detachment that is the same detachment but has been totally redone per the balanced data slate for 40K and your Astra Militarum dudes?
It's certainly better than before for playing the actual game.
Yeah, so last time you were here at the house, we played 40K, and you said, I hate this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like there's a battle going on.
No.
And I submitted to you that that's because your whole army rule, your detachment rule, let's say, incentivized you to sit there, not drive the tanks around, not move forces around. Just sit there and shoot the best you can.
Which I would move around. The way I've always played this detachment since it came out is if I get it, I get it. If I don't, I don't. It was kind of always a secondary thing for playing the game, because 40K is a game about movement, and anytime I'm sitting still, that's an objective I'm not going after. That's secondaries I'm not going after. So I'd always play it as, if I'm sitting still to accomplish something in the game, I'm getting my army rule. So, or my detachment rule, I should say. So being able to be unshackled from that detachment rule, I'm quite happy about that.
Yeah, I think you're going to have a lot more fun, because it must have felt extra bad, because when you played me, I want to say that was the second or third game that I had played with my new book. Mm-hmm. And I have all these gadgets where I can jump away from you and give a guy fight first and do this, that, and the other, and all this fun stuff. And you were like, if tank doesn't move, I get lethals. And now you just get lethals all the time. And I think this is...
There's a caveat with that.
What's that?
The tanks will only get lethals against other vehicles and monsters.
Oh, that's interesting.
Infantry get lethals against, I believe, infantry. There might be something else, but I know they don't get it against vehicles.
Well, that makes sense, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's almost like the tanks are supposed to shoot the other tanks, and the vehicle and the guys are supposed to shoot the other guys.
It does open up an interesting thing in that my anti-infantry kitted out Lehman Russ is going to be on the downgrade with that.
Yeah, a little less effective. I mean, you could still shoot it into infantry and buzz them up the way it always has.
Or I can do those 20 shots into a 20 shots into a vehicle and try to get some lethal hits with that.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh. However, and I think this one people are sleeping on, the new tank shock stratagem that works off of toughness, huge improvement for your army.
Oh, for sure.
Because it makes sense now that the tank runs you over, it does some damage. Mm-hmm. Because I've been tank shocking people with the Rhino. And I roll 9 dice and knock out 4 mortal wounds or so. That feels good.
And that's more utility for the Rhino.
That's right. Because the Rhino doesn't have a lot. Mm. Yes, don't at me. I know it carries folks. That's what I'm using it for. But come on, guys.
It's always like move, drop guys out, and then the rest of the game is move blocking.
Yeah, just sit on a point until somebody blows you up for reasons that sometimes I can't figure out. Sometimes people get shooting at that empty Rhino, and I'm just like, man, shoot it for the next 4 turns, please.
Yeah.
Like, if you think I'm worried about keeping that empty Rhino, you are crazy.
One other thing before we go to the next topic is that I really enjoy that the reinforcement stratagem is once per battle.
Yeah, we do so much belly aching about points costs, points adjustments, how many points you can take. It seems silly that there were all sorts of instances where you could just make new points out of the air.
Yeah.
Are we playing a 2,000 point game, or am I playing 2,000 versus by the time it's all said and done, you were playing, 2,700?
Yeah. Well, every game we were playing, I was like bringing back another 20-man guard squad every turn.
Every turn.
You'd blow them away. But here's the thing that I like about it. I like that because for me, bringing back all those guys every turn, that was my crutch for playing the game. But because it's gone now, that limitation is making me think about what needs to come back. What's the most important unit I have to bring back? And also, I was saving up most of my command points to be able to do that. So now with that out of the picture, being able to only do it once, I'm able to focus on the other stratagems I have and see what else can be done instead of banking my points for that.
Yeah, I mean, it created a scenario where you never just didn't use any stratagems.
No, I was like 2 command points, just constantly saving up for it.
And now with the aura things, like I've been taking Cypher. Mm-hmm. If he's within 12, that'll cost you 3.
Yeah, it's going to change up how I play because I usually give Kurov's Aquila to someone, which is the same sort of mechanic for guard.
Yeah, it's neat. Cypher spent his time against the Oryx right up in the middle of things, but we'll probably talk more about that game next pod with Casey. But let's close the bits box and get into our main topic.
Well, we never did an open sound.
Yeah, we never did do an open sound.
Anyway.
Well, we are not at full strength without Casey. He is the patriarch. He is the big E of this thing. Who am I?
You're Malcador.
Who's that?
He's the in the Horus Heresy, he was the Emperor's like second hand.
See, I feel like I'm some other thing. I might be. Was it Erebus? Was the word bearer guy?
I guess
that talked all his bleep and convinced everyone to come to chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like I might be him.
Possibly.
Well, who does that make you?
I have no idea. I'm just. I guess I'm like some kind of like mechanicus guy or like administrative guy, like in the back room, like slaving away, trying to get the stuff out to people.
That's right. You're the guy just underneath the floor wrenching on something.
I'm like a half servitor, like administrative guy.
That's it. Oh, this is good. So someone get on the AI prompts and get me and Casey and Austin as those various things. And it'll be hilarious.
So 40K, is it hard?
It is hard. Is that good?
I guess not.
Well, it depends, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It depends on what you like. So what made me think about this was I was thinking about it a little bit before, but then it tied into something that Casey said last week, where we had this balanced data slate come out and a lot of rules changed. And so if you were someone who had some difficulty getting your head around 40K and 10th edition,
yeah,
then they come through periodically and they adjust little stuff here and there. And then sometimes there's big sweeping changes, like movement just is different now.
Mm-hmm.
And the same way that it has to be. Let me back up and take another run at this. We play 40K, and the way 40K is with its sort of lean toward competitiveness, we probably play it way more right than you and I just did Gunfighters Brawl.
Of course, yeah.
Brawl. But there was a brawl.
Yes.
We'll tell you guys about it in a moment, because you'll get what we're talking about here when we talk about different flavors of miniatures games and miniature hobbying, and different mindsets and expectations that you should have depending on what's going on. But yeah, so new rules came out for 40K, and we are all required to learn the heck out of them.
Mm-hmm.
Or else don't show up, because this is the standard that the game and the community around the game have decided. Like, it kind of gets there organically, right?
Yeah.
But that's what it is.
Here's the new guidelines. Everyone has to adapt to these guidelines. And if you're not going to, you're going to show up to the game and be like, well, this is how it used to be. And I'm going to be like, well, here's the new way. You got to do it this way.
And that could cause some really bad feeling sort of interactions with your fellow players, too.
Yeah, you don't want to be the guy that has to learn the game like bit by bit every game you come in.
Yeah. And yeah, right, because the people that play a lot are like, they're not even thinking about how to play the game. Like, like when I'm playing 40K, even with the new rules, because Casey calls me the game master for a reason. I'm pretty good at remembering rules. I'm never thinking about, like, how does this work?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there'll be an edge case and we look it up, but then, like, a person's knowledge of the game helps them to just even know where to look that up. And so it's always a really quick thing. Sometimes I'll watch people that are trying to learn the game. They go to try to look something up, and I mean, they're lost in the desert.
Yeah.
And some of this stuff is really good. So let's say, what's the pros of a complicated, competitively geared game? Consistency,
I think, if you're looking for like complex systems, like lots of rules, interactions, that's the kind of game for you. If you want to be like, well, I'm going to tweak this one little thing in my army and see how that like ripples throughout the whole game.
The depth is so huge, and the depth is great because the consistency with which it is played everywhere you go means that any little change that you make sort of works no matter whose house you go to.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a lot of times I go to Dungeons and Dragons about things to make comparisons because I run a D&D campaign every Sunday. And, we house rule stuff because you have to in role-playing games, because otherwise it gets very, very samey same if absolutely everything is played as written out of the book.
Very meta. Everywhere
you go, it gets very meta, and you sort of end up losing the role-playing part of the game. And so, the sort of strategies that you might use in a more, let's call it by the book game, don't always transfer. But in 40K, they absolutely do. Now, in something like we played today, Gunfighter's Ball, totally opposite.
Oh, absolutely.
So explain to the people what the heck was going on in our game today.
Well, Gunfighter's Ball is a sort of Western cowboy skirmish game, and we were recreating the gunfight at the OK Corral.
I'll be your Huckleberry.
Yeah, Tombstone, if you've seen that film.
It's the one with the meme.
Oh, yeah. Many memes. Sam Elliott. Anyway, and we were playing that out, that scenario, and there were a lot of moments in the game where we kind of stood back for a second and thought, well, what would this character be doing at this point? What are his motivations? Could he see, is he going to, just because some guy behind him got shot, is he aware of that? Is he going to immediately swivel around like a robot and fire all his guns into that person? Or is he going to focus on the person in front of him? It's kind of going into that mindset of a hybrid of a skirmish game and a role-playing game, which I find fascinating.
Yeah, I do too, because it's like, we've got rules, but they don't actually, they're more like guidelines.
We were bending the rules when it made sense for the scenario.
And the reason you're able to do that in that kind of game too is because the rules they're not great
I wouldn't say they're great. They're just not in depth.
Yeah, that's it. It's not that they're bad. Okay. So saying they're not great in the sense that they are not codified legal documents.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what they are.
No.
They're here's a way to resolve what happens when guys get shot.
Yeah.
If you do any shooting, you might not. You might roll, because this is a weird one in that game. To move, you roll a D10 and then you move that number of inches. So sometimes you move 10. Sometimes you move 1.
Mm-hmm.
And, I
think that's mainly to kind of simulate someone getting on the bad foot if they're trying to run.
Yeah, they're wearing cowboy boots and sand. Yeah. But think about it. Not to get too mathematician on you guys, but 1 through 10 on a single dice is just a linear chart,
mm-hmm.
right? You have just as much chance to roll 10 as you do 1. So you have no idea how far a guy can go. Activations are decided by a deck of playing cards with names written on them.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's Doc Holliday's turn. I'm going to move. I hope he can move. I hope he can get to the saloon doors. 1. Okay, Doc's going to take 1 step over. I guess I'll shoot at that guy over there.
Mm-hmm.
Since my whole plan has gone out the window. So the other thing though is when we sat down to do it, we discussed we're gonna kind of make this make some sense,
mm-hmm.
because to me it's more fun that way to say these were in fact real people
mm-hmm.
in a real gunfight, and if you were a real person, real gunfight, if you'd had your arm shot off, you're not gonna be going out shooting both pistols, one with your toe.
Yeah.
Against the 3 remaining lawmen. You're probably just going to put your hands up and be glad to get out of there.
Yeah, we discussed guidelines beforehand. We were like, we're going to play this out as realistically as we can. We're going to have set guidelines for the lawmen, what their goal in the game is, set guidelines for the outlaws, and we stood by them as close as we could during the game.
So, another game that I play a lot of is the Judge Dredd game.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it because it's just the same kind of thing. Now, it has more rules, quite a few more. And as far as completion, as far as like that sort of codified legal document kind of thing. Because like, if we go to like the sort of codifying of rules, Gunfighter's Ball, very little of it.
Very little.
40K, as much as there can be. Star Wars Shatterpoint, Marvel Crisis Protocol, as much as there can be. In fact, in some ways, those games are one step in your mind, everyone. Take Gunfighter's Ball and put it to the left, and that's Beer and Pretzel's RPG maximum, right? Over on the right, put competitive, crunchy, sweaty games, 40K, and then go further right and put your Atomic Mass games, your Marvel Crisis Protocol, and your Star Wars Shatterpoint, because those things are 100% built to be almost like video games or like board games.
I was about to say they're lean more into a board game. So.
Yeah, they do lean more toward a board game. I mean, they have a whole sequencing flow chart that is never wrong.
Mm-hmm.
There's no instance where you're outside of how that flow chart works. And that's nice. However, every game always plays the same. Like, different stuff happens, but the sort of energy that you approach the game with is always with this competitive me against you sort of ilk, rather than over on the left side, on the RPG, on the Beer and Pretzel side, what we're doing is, let's see what happens.
Would you almost say that for the Marvel Crisis Protocol and Star Wars, it's more like you're playing with these tokens that are named like Anakin Skywalker, and then just playing out the rules with them, rather than being like, this is Anakin Skywalker doing these things?
So you've not played Shatterpoint.
I have not.
And you should, because I'm gonna glow up Shatterpoint here, all right? I'm gonna give Shatterpoint a shine. Marvel Crisis Protocol does feel sometimes like that.
Mm-hmm.
These are made by the same people. MCP came first, Shatterpoint pretty recently. Sometimes MCP feels like Blade and Captain America or Rogue all kind of feel like they do the same stuff. Man, Star Wars Shatterpoint, Vader feels totally different from Ahsoka.
Mm-hmm.
Stormtroopers feel totally different from battle droids. They have really done something incredible with that.
That's interesting.
Because, like, Ahsoka does this stuff where she'll be in the middle of a fight, and then as you check your successes, she'll bang, bang, and then jump and move and go stand on a whole nother point. So it's just like in the cartoon where she jumps in, pop, 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 and then backflips out of it. And that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, but I do understand what you're saying, because MCP, for instance, does feel like that. And 40K, when playing match play, feels like that, where it's very little let's see what happens and very much me against you. It's like we're playing chess or checkers, where there's no other consideration but we're going to hang out, we're going to talk some, and I'm going to try to crush you before me.
Mm-hmm.
That's the game. Is that always what you want? I ask you, Austin, is that always what you want?
Not always. I feel like, at least coming at it for me, my interest in tabletop war games has always been more for storytelling and kind of scene setting with the miniatures, and being able to tell a story with all my little guys laid out on the table.
Yeah, so you're definitely more of the let's see what happens.
I almost want like a hybrid, like a middle. If we're looking back at that chart where 40K is on one side and Gunfighter's on the other side.
Yep.
I can appreciate both systems, but I'd like something more in the middle.
Yeah, and it's tough when you get in the middle, because Judge Dredd is closer to the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And what me and the homie Valerie find often that Judge Dredd has got there's some list building stuff. There's some action economy stuff that you can do that is automatic win.
Mm-hmm.
So if all you want to do is play to win, you can pretty easily solve to just win.
Yeah.
And you will win most of the time that way. And it's not a lot of fun because it's just a walkover. But when we just say, okay, but what if it was a couple of robots, a judge, and a fatty, and they're fighting over the ice cream cone shop?
Mm-hmm.
Well, then it just proceeds to be, well, I don't know what's going to happen, but let's see. And then you worry about the points and stuff, but you sort of intentionally avoid the things that you know can make it silly.
Yeah.
And then you know, just like we did today, you sort of play it the way that you imagine that the participants would do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes much more fun. But because it's so in the middle, it's sometimes difficult to keep the two ideas separated.
That's how I feel going to a Games Workshop product. That's how I feel Necromunda is. And they play similar from my experience.
Yeah, they do. I believe that the guy that made Judge Dredd had a hand in making Necromunda back in the day.
You could have.
And there's a lot of shared systems. But where does that put what, you know, so what we've done now, we've created the spectrum of competitive, crunchy, like codified law style rules versus see what happens rule sets, guidelines. Where does that put your beer and pretzels, random, you know, shoots and ladders Candyland games like Blood Bowl?
Blood Bowl,
it's almost on a separate tree next to Let's See What Happens, isn't it?
I almost want to turn this into like a 3-dimensional graph.
That's what I'm saying.
Because Blood Bowl kind of intersects both points in where
it's me versus you every time.
It plays into a very fun game, like on the surface, like let's play fantasy football with like our little funny guys. But once you like start going to the rules, there are people out there that take this game so seriously, and it's close to a board game. You've got all your set stats and movement, everything. So you can really like competitively gear this game out. Yeah,
but then, okay, you've competitively geared the game out, and then you're rolling 2 dice, and a couple of the facings mean you fall down where you stand for no good reason.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you roll 1d6 to do everything, and it's like, if you roll a 1, your whole entire plan is messed up. Sometimes in the if you kids have not played Blood Bowl, go get you some Blood Bowl teams, get the starter set, play it. It's wonderful, but it will make you angry. Here's why. If you have more than double the strength of the guy that you're trying to tackle, you get to roll 3 dice, 3 of the Blood Bowl specific tackle dice, and you get to choose one of the results. So you would think, great, I'm always going to win in this scenario. And then you roll the 3 dice, and it's 3, you fall down, you lose. Thank you, good night.
Then I'm over there cheering for my guys.
Yes. And it's like, well, I had the absolute greatest advantage I could possibly have, and yet. So that's like checkers. If sometimes you jumped a piece and it's like, okay, now you lose that piece. and that's got to drive some people insane.
Mm-hmm.
But again, part of what we're talking about in these differences and what we like about them, what we don't like, is also the sort of social contract you make with whoever you're playing with.
I was going to bring that up.
And yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know when I'm playing Blood Bowl, sometimes stuff's going to be silly.
Mm-hmm.
And I signed up to play Blood Bowl. I signed up for Crazy Town.
Yeah, it's a social contract between yourself and the other person. Because you can go into these games also having a competitive mindset. When the other person is here for like beer and pretzels, like let's see what happens in the game. They're not taking it as quite as seriously as you are, or yeah. So the social contract is very important when it comes to these kind of games.
Does the game sometimes, I mean, I feel I'm asking this rhetorically. Does the game sometimes make the social contract itself? Because I feel like MCP, Shatterpoint, the game dictates the social contract.
I think so.
40K, if you're playing a match play game, I feel like it doesn't entirely make the social contract, because sometimes you have guys that want to be ridiculously sweaty. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, we're only going to use the approved terrain layouts, and we're going to put down dice to mark exactly how far every single thing is going to move. And it's like, man, why don't you play Tabletop Simulator then? Because that is a little bit too.
Yeah,
it's not that important.
I think 40K match play is very much a gray area when it comes to that, because you can look at it from like, I want to play a casual game, but also set within the guidelines of match play, so we're going to have equal points and everything.
Yeah, and it's like, oh shoot, I forgot to move that guy. Can I move that guy? And it's like,
no, you can't move that guy.
Yeah, no, you missed your chance. It's like, okay, so we're going to do that. And almost like maybe the Tabletop Battles app needs to have like a little checklist where both players can be like, da, 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 da. And then you can just look at it and be like, all right, they filled out their side. I fill out my side.
A form you got to fill out?
Yeah, a little form like how...
Consenting parties?
Yeah, like how, prickly are we going to be on this thing? That'd be kind of nice, because it's always a bit of a feel bad when you're halfway through the game and one of those things come up and then you discover it's like, oh, we're doing that? All right.
Yeah.
Because it's the same in golf when you're like, yeah, I'll give you a 2-foot putt. Go ahead and pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
And then the guy's like, no, man, putt that. I'm like, are you serious? If you had a single 2-foot putt today, I would have just let you have it. But now you're making me putt it. All right, I guess that's what we're doing. I had one more thing. Oh, I remember. So there is light. There is light for those sweaty competitive games that we love, like 40K, to also have them reach across the aisle to the beer and pretzels and the let's see what happens, because that is a lot of the fun for me, and that is various campaign and crusade rule sets. Yeah. So, Judge Dredd, we talked about how it sits in the middle, and that can make the thing feel funny. It is designed to be played as a campaign. It's not actually meant to be a fight to the death every time, and then that's it. When you add into, and then 40K Crusade mode is also this way, where if you get your guys all the way killed, then you may not have them next time, or they may be worse next time.
Yeah, take all those penalties.
Yeah, so you don't want to get everybody killed. Judge Dredd, if you play it and someone like does the list and activation thing to where it gets kind of broken. If it's not going your way right off, you can run off the board and be like, all right, I lose. Your guys are still going to get some experience. They're not going to die. Obviously, your opponent will win, but they're not going to get a huge wealth of experience for their dudes. And then you can just re-rack it and try it again and be like, all right, this is 2 weeks later. Pick a new mission. We're going to do it again. You can do that. And you're incentivized to do that because you don't want your dudes to die.
Yeah.
Same thing in 40K. You can have it where... It's funny. Some months ago, I got the new Pariah Nexus Crusade book, and I was playing Pariah Nexus Crusade missions with people around. And the first few I played with people, especially at 1,000 points, I was winning a lot. And I was nearly tabling some folks because they sort of didn't know any other way to play than to the death, it ends today, like you play match play. And I'm like, man, you can just go hide that dude. There's no reason to just run your guy into a buzzsaw if it's over with. And that's okay because the contract changes. It's not you and me to the death. It's what happens if my little force, with all their wealth of experience from previous battles, rocks up and fights your force with all their wealth of experience from previous battles. And that's a totally different game. And I think it's good. But also, I think it is too often forgotten about.
I feel like as a whole, Games Workshop has been catering more towards the crunchy, like competitive crowd.
You know what, though? I think that they do that because that competitive thing requires a lot of cultivating, a lot of tending. Like it is a garden of wild growing weeds, and you're trying to continuously clip and chop, and I'm doing finger scissors now.
I see.
Quite comically. Austin can see that. Because it'll grow out of control if you're not careful. The Crusade stuff, the let's see what happens stuff, is an entirely self-correcting, self-policing sort of thing. And so I'm not sure that 40K necessarily is always leaning or pushing toward that as much as they are just trying to give the people that want that its due attention. Because I wasn't here for 5th, 6th, 7th edition, but the way I understand it is you'd be lucky to get a balanced data slate every couple of years. And whatever was busted would just ride along busted. And that doesn't sound like much fun.
I guess sometimes I'd say there's almost an argument for keeping, if things are set up at least like as balanced as possible, and you don't have like nanny Games Workshop coming through and like correcting every little thing. Sometimes there's a little merit to that, like Lord of the Rings, because it hardly gets any updates at all. I think the community is actually scared if Games Workshop looks at it.
Yeah, I wonder how much, because that may be. I think that 40K has got a lot of new players. It's bigger than it's ever been, and it's only growing. The TV shows, the movies, the video games, etc., have brought new people to the hobby, and I also think it's brought younger people to miniature gaming, and younger people know video games. Mm-hmm. And there's an amount of, well, this is how, like, take the video game part of video game away. Take the video away. And I think that people would say, well, this is how games work.
Yeah.
You play games to win the game against whoever you're playing with.
Mm-hmm.
And then the role playing and the let's see what happens and all that, I think, is a little bit of a throwback.
It is.
And we at 40K Fanatics, as we wrap here, are here to remind you to throw back. Get your Legends stuff out. Play a silly points cost. Throw a book under a sheet and call it a hill. And just see what happens.
Winning isn't everything.
That's right. I'm Shane. That's Austin. Casey will be back. As always, check out 40K Fanatics on X and everywhere else, Spotify, Apple Music, etc., and the YouTube, where Austin toils away in the innards of the Space Hulk to try to get it posted. As Casey would say, much to my chagrin every time, stay fanatical, folks.